At my father-in-law's birthday party, I accidentally spilled wine on him. He punched me in the face, blood hit the flue, and yelled, "Stupid maid, wash my shirt." My husband said, "Apologize or get out." So I left. But when they got home, 68 missed calls. I held the champagne glass and tried to smile, even though the ring on my finger felt heavier than lead. The voices of the guests who had come to celebrate my engagement to Kyle were buzzing around me. 20 years old, and I was already supposed to be someone's wife. My mom says it's right to get married early while you're young and beautiful. Our living room was decorated with white and pink ribbons. My mom and Dexter spent a lot of money on this party, even though I asked for something more modest. But what will people say, as my mom always says? The guests are mostly their friends, Dexter's colleagues from accounting, and neighbors. My friends are few and far between, and even they felt out of place. Kyle was standing next to me, telling Aunt Meredith about his job as a manager at a car dealership. He's handsome, and makes good money. My mom said I was lucky to have such a fiancé. But for some reason, I felt like I was playing someone else's role in someone else's play. Grandpa Chester was sitting in his favorite armchair by the fireplace, watching all this festive chaos. He was 87 years old, but his back was straight and his eyes were still piercing. He never liked large gatherings, but he came for me. Grandpa is the only one who really understands me. I've been working as a cashier in a supermarket for 2 years after school. Temporarily, as I tell everyone, I don't really know what I want out of life. Kyle says I don't have to work after the wedding. He'll provide for the family. But something in me protests against this future. "Blair, daughter," Grandpa called to me, waving his hand. I went over and sat on the arm of his chair. Grandpa always smelled of old books and mint. "So," he smiled, taking my hand, "how do you like the beach house I gave you? I hope you feel comfortable there." I froze. The glass almost fell out of my hands. "What mansion?" I whispered, looking into his kind brown eyes. "Grandpa, I was never allowed to live there. I don't even know where it is." The smile disappeared from his face instantly. Surprise appeared in his eyes, and then something like suspicion. He slowly turned to his mom and Dexter, who were standing next to the three-tiered cake, talking to the guests. "Vivian," Grandpa's voice became hard and cold. "What does this mean?" My mother, who had been laughing at a joke from her neighbor, Mrs. Parker, suddenly turned around. When she saw the look on Grandpa's face, her smile disappeared. She turned pale so that the lipstick on her lips looked like a bright red stain on white paper. Dexter felt the tension, too. He nervously adjusted the tie he was so proud of. "Dad," Mom began, coming closer, "maybe we shouldn't talk about this right now. We have a party, guests." "Holiday?" Grandpa tried to get up from his chair, and I helped him. "My granddaughter doesn't know about the gift I gave her 3 years ago. She hasn't even seen her own house." My younger brother Troy, who had been standing in the corner with a plate of sandwiches, came closer. 19 years old, tall and skinny like Dexter. He had always been a quiet guy, but not stupid. Now his eyes showed concern. The conversations of the guests began to quiet down. Someone sensed that something was wrong. Kyle came up to me, put his hand on my shoulder, but I barely felt him. My whole being was focused on what my grandfather was saying. "What is he talking about?" I asked my mom quietly, looking her in the eye. "This is a mistake," Dexter quickly interjected, taking a step forward. "It's normal at his age." "Confused?" Grandpa shook with indignation. His voice grew louder, attracting the attention of everyone present. "Troy, bring me my briefcase from my office immediately, right now." My brother shot a quick glance at my mom and Dexter, as if asking for permission. But my grandfather's tone of voice did not allow for objections. "Go, son," my mother said quietly. Troy left the living room. We were all silent, only the clock on the mantelpiece ticked. The guests were quiet, feeling the tension. Someone even put down their glass and started to get ready to leave. A minute later, Troy returned with a worn leather briefcase that my grandfather had been carrying everywhere for the past 10 years. "Here," Grandpa pulled out a folder of documents with shaky hands. "A deed to a beach house in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was made in the name of Blair Collins on June 3rd, 2021. I took the documents with shaking hands. The paper was real, official. Seals, signatures, black and white, donation of real estate, my name in big letters, and at the bottom was my signature, which I didn't remember putting at all. I didn't sign this, I whispered, reading the document over and over again. You did, daughter, Grandpa said softly. You and I went to Mr. Johnson's notary. You said you understood the responsibility and were ready to become the owner. A vague memory was playing in my head, the summer of 3 years ago. Grandpa said something about important documents, that I was an adult and could make serious decisions. We went somewhere in the city center, sitting in some office. I remembered signing something, but I thought it was some bank papers or insurance. Why didn't I know it was a deed of gift for the house? My voice grew louder, almost shouting. Mom and Dexter were silent, looking at each other. Because they hid those documents from you. My grandfather looked at his daughter with such bitterness that I was scared. Vivian, finally explain to your daughter why she didn't know about her own house for 3 years, why she couldn't live there, relax, invite friends. There was silence. Even the ticking of the clock seemed deafening. We wanted to, Mom began in a weak voice, but Dexter interrupted her abruptly. Listen, man, he approached the grandfather. You can't just give away real estate to children like that. Blair is too young for that kind of responsibility. This property is worth a lot of money. It needs repairs, maintenance. Children? Grandpa shouted, causing several of the guests to flinch. My blood! And who are you to decide what she needs? I'm her stepfather and... You're nobody! The grandfather waved his hand so sharply that he almost fell over. You married my daughter for money against my will. I saw through you from the first day. The guests were already looking at us openly, forgetting all politeness. Someone whispered, someone pulled out a phone. Kyle tried to intervene. Perhaps we should talk privately without strangers. No! I pushed his hand away with such force that he almost fell over. I want to know the truth, now, in front of everyone. Mom started to cry, not loudly, just tears streaming down her cheeks, blurring her carefully applied makeup. We hid the documents, she finally said in a barely audible voice. They've been in our safe for 3 years. Why? I was almost screaming now. Why did you do that? Because Dexter said it wasn't fair. Mom wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Troy frowned. He had always been Dexter's favorite, his own son, and I was the stepdaughter who was tolerated for my mom's sake. I was planning to re-register the mansion for the whole family, Dexter said coldly, looking down at me, to make it fair for everyone. For you, you mean, Grandpa shook with anger. Did you think I'd forget and die, and you'd loot all my property? Dad, don't say that! Mom rushed to Grandpa, but he stepped back. Don't you dare call me that! He raised a trembling hand. My daughter wouldn't do that. Dexter flushed red with rage. Look, Chester, that's enough. You've always been meddling in our lives. You've always tried to control us. Because I see you for what you really are. Grandpa pointed a finger at Dexter. A lazy debtor who lives off my family. That's not true, Dexter protested, but he sounded ignorant. It's not true? Grandpa sneered bitterly. Who kissed Jesse's cashier at the supermarket last year? Who borrowed money from my daughter for their stupid investments? Mom gasped and put her hand over her mouth. Troy turned away as if he was ashamed. That's why I signed the mansion over to Blair, Grandpa continued, ignoring Dexter's protests. So you wouldn't get it, you naughty boy. We didn't, Dexter exclaimed. We just put it off. For 3 years? I stood up from the armrest, holding the deed in my hands. For 3 years I could have lived in my own home, and you lied to me. You were so young, so unconscious. Unconscious? I laughed at the absurdity of the situation. He's younger than me. That's different, Dexter muttered. Troy's a guy. He can take care of the property. And I can't? Because I'm a girl? There weren't many guests left. Most of them slowly packed up and left, not wanting to witness the family drama. Only the closest ones remained. Aunt Meredith, neighbor Mrs. Parker, and a few of Dexter's colleagues. They stood on the sidelines, not knowing where to go. Kyle came up to me again. Blair, honey, maybe we should really talk at home, in private. It's your engagement party. I looked at him and suddenly realized that he was against me too. What do you think about that, Kyle? I asked him bluntly. Well, maybe your parents are right. It's a lot of responsibility for a young girl. I see. I pulled the engagement ring off my finger and threw it at his feet. The wedding is off. Blair! He bent down to pick up the ring. Don't be silly. You know what I mean. I do. I turned away from him. You want a wife without property, so that she is completely dependent on you. Grandpa looked at me with pride. For the first time that evening, a smile appeared on his face. Well done, daughter, he said quietly, but so that everyone could hear. You finally showed some character. Dad, don't spoil the girl's life, my mom cried louder. Kyle is a good guy. Good, my grandfather snorted. He only wants money and a submissive wife. I looked at the papers in my hands. There was an address, 123 Ocean Drive, Myrtle Beach, my home, my own home that I hadn't known about for 3 years. I'm going to see it, I said firmly. Now. Blair, don't do anything stupid, Dexter tried to block my way. It's a mess, it's dangerous. It's my house, I stepped around him, and I have the right to go there. I'll go with you, Grandpa said, getting up from his chair. My heart can take the truth, he pushed her hand away, but not a lie. I helped my grandfather to the hallway. The rest of the family followed in silence. The atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. Blair, Troy spoke for the first time all night. I didn't know about this. Seriously. I looked at my little brother. I know, I said softer. It's not your fault. But when I looked at Mom and Dexter, I saw only fear and anger. They were afraid of losing control of me. They were afraid that I would become independent. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a feeling as if I had been run over by a truck. The party ended in a scandal, the guests left, and I locked myself in my room and cried until dawn. Kyle's ring was still on the floor in the living room. My mom put it on the fireplace, silently hoping that I would change my mind. The deed to the mansion was on my night table. I read it over and over again, not believing it was real. I have a house, a real home by the sea, and I hadn't known about it for 3 years. I went to the kitchen and found only my mother there. She was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, her eyes red and puffy. Morning, I said coldly. Blair, honey. My mom got up and tried to hug me, but I pulled away. Yes, we do. I want an explanation. Real ones, not your excuses. I wanted to protect you, she said, her voice barely audible. You were so young, so unconscious. That house was a huge responsibility. Taxes, repairs, maintenance. I was 17 when my grandfather gave it to me. Now I'm 20. I was getting older, but you never told me. We planned. Mom held up her hands defensively. When you marry Kyle, when you have a stable life, when it's convenient for you, you mean. It's not. I'm your mother. I know what's best for you. I laughed, but not happily. Better? You hid my own home from me. That's called stealing. Don't yell at me, Mom stood up sharply. I've sacrificed my whole life for you. After your father abandoned us, I raised you alone. And when you found Dexter, you should have been grateful. Grateful for what? For the fact that he hated me from the beginning? Dexter doesn't hate you. He just wanted to take over Grandpa's property through you, I interrupted her. At that moment, the door opened and Dexter and Troy walked in. They were dressed in gym clothes, so they must have gone to the gym. Oh, our princess is awake, Dexter said with irony. So, have you changed your mind about last night's theater? I turned to him. You hid the deed to my own house from me, and you call that a theater? Listen, Blair. Dexter sat down at the table, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Your grandfather was always weird. Giving away real estate to kids is not normal. Kids? I was 17. And what could you have done with that house? He spoke in such a patronizing tone that I wanted to throw something at him. You didn't even have a driver's license then. I do now. And I have a job. A job? Dexter snorted. A supermarket cashier? That's not a job, that's a chore. Dexter, don't, my mom interjected quietly. No, let him say what he thinks. I crossed my arms over my chest. Go on. I think your grandfather made a huge mistake. Dexter glared at me. He always loved you and he ignored Troa. Why? Because Troy's my son? Maybe because Troy isn't his grandson? I looked at my brother, who hadn't said anything the whole time. I took him in like family, Dexter raised his voice. And he always hated me. Because he saw right through you, a voice suddenly came from the door. Grandpa was standing in the kitchen, leaning on his cane. He looked bad, pale lips, trembling hands. Grandpa, how are you feeling? I rushed to him. I'm fine, daughter. I just stayed up all night thinking about yesterday. Dad, sit down. I'll get you some tea, Mom fidgeted. No need, Grandpa sat across from Dexter. I've come to talk to this gentleman. Me? Dexter raised his eyebrows. About what? About how you cheated my daughter and stole my granddaughter's property. Listen, old man. Don't you dare call me that! The old man hit the floor with his cane. I'm not an old man. I'm nothing to you. Grandpa, calm down. I put my hand on his shoulder. You can't be nervous. Can't? What am I supposed to do when my own blood betrays me? Mom started crying again. Dad, I didn't cheat. I wanted what was best. What was best for whom? For this? Grandpa pointed at Dexter. He's been after my property since day one. That's a lie. Dexter stood up sharply. I never claimed your money. No? Then who asked to borrow $20,000 last year for an investment? Who convinced Vivian to take out a loan against my house? I turned to my mom. Is it true? Mom was silent, looking at the floor. It was a temporary financial difficulty, Dexter muttered. Every family goes through it. No family steals their children's property, Grandpa said firmly. Blair is not a child, Troy suddenly spoke up. Everyone turned to him. My younger brother had always been quiet, rarely getting involved in family arguments. What do you think? I asked him. Troy hesitated, looked at Dexter, then at Mom. I think Grandpa was unfair, he said finally. Why does everything go to you? Because you're not his blood, my grandfather shouted in English and then switched to Ukrainian. Because you're not my blood, you're the son of that bastard. I was outraged. It's true. I leave my heritage to my descendants, not to other people's children. Troy blanched. I thought you loved me, he whispered. I tolerate you, Grandpa replied coldly. But this one, he pointed at Dexter, I don't tolerate at all. That's enough. Dexter slammed his fist on the table, but he needs to know the truth about his place in this family. My place? Troy stood up from the table. What is my place? I've lived in this house for 19 years. I call my mom Mom. You're not a stranger, son, my mother rushed to him. You're my son, but not my grandfather's grandson, Troy said bitterly, and therefore I have no right to inherit. Inheritance is not the main thing, I tried to calm him down. That's easy for you to say. You have a house. You'll have everything you earn by working hard, Grandpa said. Not what you're not entitled to. Troy looked at his grandfather with such hatred that I was afraid. You know what? He said quietly. I hate you too. I always have. You've made this house a living hell for everyone who isn't a Blair. Troy, don't say that. I reached out to him, but he pushed me away. That I'm glad my sister got a house and I didn't even know about it? That I'm happy to live in the shadow of my grandfather's favorite? I never wanted to be the favorite, I said quietly. And you are, and you always will be. With that, Troy left the kitchen. A minute later, I heard the door slam as he left the house. Are you satisfied now? Dexter looked at his grandfather with hatred. Did you break up the family? I didn't break up the family. I discovered the truth. What truth? I don't hate you. I hate what you've done. The old man stood up from his chair. I hate the way you've used my daughter. The way you lied to my granddaughter. Grandpa looked at me, and I saw him turn pale right before my eyes. Grandpa, are you okay? I jumped up to him. My heart, he whispered, clutching his chest. The pills. In the briefcase. I rushed to his briefcase and found the medicine. Mom brought water. Dexter stood by and watched us try to help Grandpa. Should we call an ambulance? Mom asked. No. Grandpa came to a little bit after taking the pills. But I saw that he was really sick. Yesterday's stress and today's fight clearly didn't do him any good. I'll drive you home, I said. Blair, you don't drive, my mom interjected. I just got my license. I looked at her reproachfully. Another thing you didn't know about because you didn't ask. We were silent on the way to Grandpa's house. He sat in the passenger seat with his eyes closed. I drove through the old familiar streets of our small town and thought about how everything had changed overnight. Grandpa, I finally spoke up, maybe you shouldn't have done that so abruptly, with Troy, with Mom. Daughter. He opened his eyes and looked at me. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's still necessary. And if this truth breaks up the family, then such a family is not worth saving, he said sadly. A real family is built on love and respect, not on lies and self-interest. I stopped the car in front of his house, a small but tidy manor on the outskirts of town. You're not going back to them, Grandpa said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I don't know, I answered honestly. Mom is still Mom. And the property is still property, and it's yours. Don't let yourself be fooled again. I helped him to the door. Grandpa, what if I can't handle it? With the house, with the responsibility? He turned and smiled at me for the first time in 2 days. "You'll make it, daughter. You have character. You just haven't shown it before." 3 years flew by quickly, and at the same time, painfully slowly. My grandfather was dying gradually, like a candle going out. Every day he became weaker, but his mind remained clear until the end. I moved in with him, despite the protests of my mother and Dexter, who considered it a demonstrative gesture. My relationship with my family never recovered. My mom would sometimes call, crying into the phone, begging me to come home. Dexter did not speak to me at all. Troy would visit his grandfather from time to time, but the atmosphere was so tense that these visits quickly stopped. I got a job at the local library. It didn't pay much, but the schedule was flexible and I could take care of my grandfather. In the evening, we would sit together. He would tell stories from his youth, and I would read him books. These were the most peaceful months of my life, despite the sadness of his deteriorating condition. Grandpa never complained, but I could see how hard it was for him. His heart was failing more and more often, and his hands were trembling so much that he couldn't eat on his own. Doctors said it would be a matter of months. "Daughter," he said one winter evening as we sat by the fireplace, "I need to talk to you." "Grandpa, we don't need to talk about this now." I put my hand on his shoulder. "I can leave at any time, and you should know everything." He took a thick envelope from his desk drawer. "This is my will, all my property, the house, the mansion by the sea, the car, the savings, everything goes to you. Grandpa—" "Wait, I'm not finished. There is one condition, a very important one." He looked me in the eye seriously. "If your mom is going to be without Dexter, and sooner or later she will be, he will leave her, you have to help her. Not because she deserves it, but because she's my daughter, and your mother." "Of course, Grandpa. But what makes you think Dexter will leave her?" Grandpa smiled bitterly. "Because I've seen a lot of guys like him. He's only with her for the money. When the money runs out or someone younger and richer comes along, he'll leave. Men who marry for money don't know loyalty." I was silent, realizing that my grandfather was right. During those 3 years, I often saw Dexter in town with different women. My mom seemed to suspect too, but she turned a blind eye. "What if Mom doesn't want to see me? We don't talk." "She will. When a person is drowning, they grasp at any straw, and you will be not a straw, but a life preserver." In February, my grandfather became very ill. He hardly got out of bed, ate through the force. I took a vacation from work and did not leave his side. The doctor said it was a matter of days. "Blair," my grandfather whispered one morning, "call your mom. I want to say goodbye to her." So I called. My mom arrived an hour later, crying and worried. Troy and Dexter came too. "Dad," Mom sat down by the bed. I'm sorry for everything." "I forgave you a long time ago, daughter." Grandpa held out his hand to her. "You are my daughter, and I love you no matter what." Dexter stood in the corner, looking uncomfortable. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "I want to apologize too, for everything I said." "Come closer, boy." His grandfather held out his hand to Troy. "You just got between us adults and our problems." Troy started to cry. For the first time in 3 years, I saw his real emotions. "I wish things could have been different," he whispered. "So do I, son. But what happened, happened. The most important thing is that you and your sister don't fight. Family is the most precious thing we have." Grandpa died the next night in his sleep. I was sitting next to him, holding his hand. In his last moments, he smiled and whispered, "Thank you, daughter, for everything." The funeral was quiet. Not many people came. My grandfather lived as a hermit in his last years. Mom cried inconsolably. Troy supported her. Dexter stood aside and kept looking at his watch. After the ceremony, the notary read the will. Just as my grandfather said, all the property went to me. The house, the mansion by the sea, the 2019 Toyota Camry, the bank account with $340,000, and a provision to help my mother. "This isn't fair," he shouted right there in the notary's office. "Vivian is his daughter. Why does his stepdaughter get everything?" "Because that's what the testator wanted," the notary, Mr. Green, calmly replied. "I'll challenge it in court." Dexter slammed his fist on the table. "The old man was out of his mind." "Mr. Blackwell," the notary adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Collins was psychiatrically evaluated before his will was made. He was fully competent. You have no grounds for appeal." Mom sat and cried silently. Troy was looking at the floor. Mom, I said quietly, you know I won't leave you, no matter what. She looked at me through her tears. I don't deserve your kindness, she whispered. You do. You are my mother. Dexter grabbed his mom's hand. Let's get out of here. I don't need to hear this sentiment. The next few months were spent in litigation. Dexter hired a lawyer and really tried to challenge the will. But my grandfather had foreseen everything. The documents were impeccable, witnesses were found, and medical certificates confirmed his legal capacity. Meanwhile, I went to my beach mansion for the first time. The house turned out to be gorgeous, two-story, with large windows and a terrace overlooking the ocean. It was a little run down after 3 years of neglect, but it was solid and beautiful. I hired a company to clean it and do some minor repairs. Standing on the terrace and looking at the waves, I felt calm for the first time in a long time. This was my place, my home. But the peace did not last long. One evening, my mother called me, crying into the phone. Blair, can I come to you? I need to talk to you. She arrived an hour later, looking terrible, thin with dark circles under her eyes. What's wrong? I asked, making tea. Dexter, she stammered with tears. He's cheating on me. He's cheating on me, openly, demonstratively. With whom? Some model. Scarlett. Young, beautiful. He says I'm old and uninteresting. I sat down next to my mom and hugged her. Mom, I'm sorry, but I always knew this would happen. Grandpa said the same thing. She wiped her eyes. But I didn't believe it. I thought he really loved me. What now? I don't know. Dexter wants a divorce. He says he's found the one he really loves, and I'll be left with nothing. The house is in his name. I have no savings. I remembered what my grandfather had said about the condition in his will. Mom, you can always count on my help. Grandpa did not foresee this in vain. But I have offended you so much, my mother cried again. How can you forgive me? Because you are my mother, and because my grandfather taught me to forgive. Meanwhile, Dexter finally lost his head over his young mistress. Scarlett turned out to be a real professional at getting money out of men. First, she asked for money for a portfolio photo shoot, $5,000. Then she asked for acting courses, another $7,000. Then for investment in a modeling agency, $15,000. Dexter sold his stake in the accounting firm, took out loans, even mortgaged his house. Scarlett skillfully played the role of a woman in love who dreams of a future together with him. My love, she said in a sweet voice, wrapping her arms around him. When we get married, I will be the best wife in the world. But I need some time to develop my career. Dexter believed every word she said. He filed for divorce from my mom, kicked her out of the house, took everything he could. I feel so stupid, she said one evening as we sat in the kitchen. Grandpa warned me, but I didn't listen. The important thing is that you realize it now, I replied. At my age? Mom smiled bitterly. I'm 57 years old, I have no education, no work experience. But you have a daughter who loves you and will support you. My mother cried, but these tears were different, not from despair, but from relief. Meanwhile, Dexter's romance with Scarlett was gaining momentum. She moved in with him, began to renovate the house to her own taste, and buy expensive things. Dexter told everyone who wanted to listen about his young beauty, who was not yet 25, but I knew it wouldn't last. Grandpa was right. Women like Scarlett don't get attached to men. They look for a benefit, and when it ends, they disappear. One summer, Troy came to see us. He had changed a lot over the months, looking older than his 22 years, losing his teenage maximalism. How are things with Dad? With Dexter? I asked. Troy smiled sadly. He's completely obsessed with that Scarlett girl. He barely speaks to me, says I remind him of his old life. Where do you live? I rent a room from a friend. I work in a warehouse. It's not what I dreamed of, but it's okay for now. Mom stood up and hugged Troy. Son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that everything happened like this. Troy didn't push her away like he had before. I'm to blame too, Mom. I shouldn't have left you. You can move in with us, I said. Troy looked at me in surprise. Really? After everything I've said to you? We're a family, I said simply. And for the first time in years, the three of us sat together, Mom, me, and Troy, and it felt right. Grandpa wasn't with us, but I could feel him smiling somewhere nearby. The sun was setting outside the window, and I thought that the worst was over. A new family, A new life was ahead, and a mansion by the sea waiting for me. The divorce lasted almost a year. Dexter was ruthless. He demanded half of everything that could be divided. My mom tried to resist through a lawyer, but the forces were unequal. Dexter had the money for a good lawyer, and my mom had only her salary from the supermarket job she got after she moved in with me. I watched my mom come home every night broken and tired. Working as a cashier at the age of 57 is not what she dreamed of when she was young. "How was your day?" I would ask when she came into the kitchen with her shoulders slumped. "As usual," my mother would answer, taking off her uniform, and the young girls look at me like I'm a dinosaur. Troy also moved in with us after Dexter made it clear that he no longer needed his son. He worked at a construction site, giving part of his earnings to family expenses. The three of us lived modestly but peacefully. Meanwhile, Dexter was bathed in happiness with his Scarlett. They went out to restaurants and parties together, and he took her to expensive stores. Scarlett was a real beauty, long blonde hair, perfect figure, always impeccably dressed. Next to her, Dexter looked 10 years younger. "I saw them yesterday at the mall," my mother said one evening. "He bought her a dress for $300. "Don't think about it," I advised. "You should focus on yourself." But my mom couldn't stop thinking. 20 years of marriage crumbled to dust in a few months. She lost not only her husband, but also her home, status, and confidence in the future. In the spring, court hearings began to divide the property. Dexter demanded half of all the jointly acquired wealth. But the most controversial issue was the car, a Honda Accord that my grandfather had given my mother for her birthday 5 years ago. "It was a gift to my father-in-law," Dexter's lawyer argued. "The car was bought during the marriage and is community property. But the deed of gift was in my client's name," my mother's lawyer argued. "And it was a personal gift from my father." The trial lasted for months. Dexter was confident of victory. He had money, influential friends, and a good lawyer. He did not even hide his pleasure at seeing his ex-wife suffer. Meanwhile, Scarlett continued to develop her career. She convinced Dexter to invest $30,000 in a modeling agency that her friend was supposedly opening. Then another $20,000 was spent on equipment for a photo studio. Then $15,000 for an advertising campaign. "Darling," she said, kissing him in the ear, "this is our future together. When I become a famous model, we will live like in a fairy tale." Dexter believed. He believed when she asked for money for plastic surgery. He believed when she said she needed a new car to go to casting calls. He believed when she convinced him to sell his share in the accounting firm to make a serious investment. I watched this circus from the outside and realized that my grandfather was right. Dexter had fallen blindly in love and lost his head. And Scarlett was a professional. She knew how to manipulate men, how to squeeze the most out of them and disappear at the right moment. That moment came in the fall. The court finally made a decision. The property was divided equally. Dexter got half the car, half the savings from the joint account, and half the value of the house. But the house remained with my mom, and Dexter was to receive compensation. The amount was decent, about $160,000 in savings plus $18,000 for half the car. Mom had to pay him back within a year. "Where am I going to get that kind of money?" she cried after the decision was announced. "I don't even have $1,000. "I'll help," I said. "I have Grandpa's inheritance." "No," Mom shook her head. "I can't take your money. I've already hurt you enough." "Mom, Grandpa didn't write a condition in his will to help you for nothing. He foresaw this situation." But Mom was stubborn. She took out a home equity loan and paid Dexter the entire amount at once. I could see how hard that decision was for her. Now she had a 20-year debt load. Dexter was thrilled. With $180,000, he felt like the king of the world. Scarlett was ecstatic too, as new opportunities for investment had emerged. "Darling," she said, hugging him, "I have a great idea. My friend is opening a chain of fitness clubs. If we invest $100,000, we can double his capital in a year." Dexter, of course, agreed. He was ready to give her everything, as long as she stayed by his side. But Scarlett had other plans. After receiving the money for the investment, she began preparing to disappear. First, she said she was going to Los Angeles for an important casting call. Then she said she had to stay there for a month to shoot a commercial. Dexter missed her, called her 10 times a day, sent her flowers and gifts. Scarlett was sweet on the phone, promising to return quickly and arrange an unforgettable meeting for him. But a week turned into a month into 2. Calls became less frequent. Scarlett was always busy with some projects. And then the day came when her phone simply wouldn't answer. Dexter went to Los Angeles, looking for her at all the addresses he knew. It turned out that there was no casting call, no filming either, and that friend with the fitness clubs didn't exist at all. Scarlett disappeared with all the money. Dexter returned home a broken man. In a few months, he aged 10 years. Gray hair in his temples, deep wrinkles, and a dull look in his eyes. He had lost not only his money, but also his faith in himself. One day in December, he suddenly appeared at our house. He stood on the doorstep with his head down, not knowing what to say. "What do you want?" Troy asked coldly. I wanted to talk to Vivian," Dexter mumbled. "Vivian," Dexter began, "can I talk to you?" His mom crossed her arms over her chest. I need help. Scarlett, she left me. She took all the money and disappeared." "So?" Mom's voice was icy. "I'm left with nothing. I even had to sell my apartment to pay off the loans. I was thinking, maybe we could what?" Mom interrupted. "Get back together? After you humiliated me, threw me out of the house, took the last of my money?" "I realize I was wrong," Dexter spoke quietly, not looking up. "But we were a family for 20 years. That counts for something." "It did for me." "It didn't for you," Mom came closer. "You destroyed our family for a young whore, and now that she's dumped you, you're thinking about me?" "Vivian, I know I have no right to ask, but—" "You don't," Mom said firmly. Dexter looked at Troy, hoping for his son's support. "Troy, say something. I'm your father." Troy looked at him for a long time, then shook his head. "You stopped being my father the day you kicked my mom out of the house. You were only interested in your young mistress, and now that she has deceived you, you have come back? But I've lost everything." Dexter was almost in tears. "I have no one." "That's your choice," I said, interjecting. "You chose money and a young body over a family. Now live with the consequences." Dexter stood there for another minute, then turned and walked away. We never saw him again. That evening, my mom sat in the kitchen and cried. "You know," she said, "I thought I would be happy to see him so miserable, but I just don't care. He died for me the day he brought that girl into our house." "That's right," I replied. "Now you can think about your future." "Future?" Mom smiled through her tears. "At my age, what kind of future can we talk about? Any kind you choose." Mom thought about it. "You know, I had a dream," she said quietly, "ever since I was young. I wanted to open my own beauty salon. I've always loved doing hair and makeup. I even took a course before I got married." "Why not try it now?" "No way," my mother waved her hand. "It requires money, which I have, and after the divorce, I'm up to my eyeballs in debt." I thought about what Grandpa had said, about the condition in his will. "Mom, how much does it take to open a small salon?" "Well, 30 or 40,000 for equipment, rent, repairs, but it's unrealistic." "Why unrealistic?" I sat down next to her. "I have money, Grandpa's inheritance." "Blair, no," Mom shook her head. "I can't take your money. I've hurt you enough already." "Mom, you don't understand. Grandpa left me this property for a reason. He wanted me to help you. It's not a gift, it's the fulfillment of his will." Mom looked at me in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. Tomorrow we'll go looking for a place for the salon." For the first time in many months, my mother really smiled. "And if it doesn't work out?" "You won't," I hugged her. "You're a strong woman, Mom. You just forgot about it." Troy, who had been listening to our conversation in silence, came over and hugged us both. "Grandpa would be pleased," he said quietly. "He always said that family was the most important thing." And I felt that my grandfather was really somewhere nearby, smiling. His plan had worked. Scarlett did her job. She punished Dexter for his greed and betrayal, and the three of us became a real family like we had never been before. Snow was falling outside the window, and I thought that the worst was over. There was a new life ahead, for Mom, for Troy, for me, and a mansion by the sea where we would go in the spring to start everything from scratch. My mother's salon, Vivian, opened in the spring. A small but cozy room in the center of the town, with 3 chairs and modern equipment. My mother worked like a madwoman, getting up at 6 in the morning, getting ready for work, and seeing clients until 8 p.m. "I have to earn a reputation," she said when I advised her not to overwork. And she did. After a few months, she had regular clients. Women came not only to get their hair cut, but also to talk and share their problems. Mom was a good listener, and they appreciated it. Meanwhile, I took care of the mansion by the sea. The house needed serious repairs. It was necessary to repaint the walls, repair the plumbing, and update the furniture. I hired a team of workers led by Ethan Richards, a local carpenter. Ethan looked nothing like Kyle. He was tall, strongly built, with calloused hands and sincere brown eyes. He was 27 years old, had his own carpentry shop, and a reputation as the best craftsman in the neighborhood. When he talked about wood, there was a special warmth in his voice. "This house has a good foundation," he said on the first day of work, inspecting the walls. "You knew my grandfather?" I was surprised. Of course, Chester Collins was a legend in these parts, an honest man, and there are few of them left. The repairs took 2 months. I came every day, followed the work, helped as much as I could. Ethan turned out to be not only a skilled carpenter, but also an interesting conversationalist. He talked about the town, the people, and shared his plans for expanding the workshop. "What are you planning to do with this house, Bob?" he asked one day when we were having coffee on the terrace. "I'm thinking of turning it into a hotel," I said. "A bed and breakfast, as they say." Ethan thought about it. "That's a good idea. It's a beautiful spot, close to the beach. Do you think it will work?" "With your perseverance, it will," he smiled. "You remind me of your grandfather. You have the same willpower." When the renovation was finished, the house was unrecognizable. Light walls, new furniture, cozy rooms with sea views. I got a hotel license and started receiving my first guests. Things were going well. The mansion had 5 guest rooms, and in the summer they were always full. I cooked breakfast, cleaned the rooms, and communicated with tourists. For the first time in my life, I felt like a real mistress of my own destiny. Ethan often stopped by to check on me. Sometimes he helped with minor repairs. Sometimes he just had coffee on the terrace. We gradually developed a special relationship, not a passionate one, like with Kyle, but something deeper and more secure. "I like how you've changed," he said one evening as we sat on the beach watching the sunset. "And now you're a strong woman who knows what she wants." I smiled. I had to learn. "Life rarely leaves you a choice," Ethan agreed. "But how you respond to challenges is your choice." Meanwhile, my family was getting better. My mom's salon was thriving. Troy got a job with a construction company and was even thinking about going to college. We were closer than ever. But the peace was broken by unexpected news. One day, Jessica Thompson, Dexter's former colleague from the accounting firm, walked into my mom's salon. "Vivian," she said quietly, looking around, "I need to talk to you. It's about Dexter." "What's wrong with him?" "He took a job at our firm. He says he wants to start a new life after a bad investment." "And?" "He's back to the same schemes he was doing before. He forges documents, transfers money to fictitious accounts. He thinks no one will notice." Jessica took a folder out of her bag. "Here are copies of the documents. I can't officially expose him. He threatens to ruin my career. But you could pass this on to the right people." Mom took the folder with trembling hands. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because Dexter didn't just destroy your marriage. For years, he defrauded clients, stealing money from pension funds. People lost their life savings because of his fraud." That evening, my mother and I sat in the kitchen and looked at the documents. Everything was clear and straightforward. Dexter created fictitious accounts, transferred clients' money there, and then invested it in non-existent projects. "What should we do?" my mom asked. "We should take this to the police," I replied. "People need to know the truth." "But he's an ex-husband, Troy's father." "He's a criminal," I said firmly. "He needs to be punished." The next day, my mom and I went to the police station. Detective James Walker, who worked on financial crimes, studied the documents for a long time. "This is a serious matter," he said at last. "If everything is confirmed, he faces up to 10 years in prison." "What about us?" My mother was nervous. "He'll guess who turned him in." "We'll ensure your safety," the detective reassured me. Dexter's arrest happened a week later. He was taken right at his workplace in front of all his colleagues. The charges were serious: embezzlement, fraud, forgery. The news quickly spread through the town. Dexter Blackwell, a respected accountant, turned out to be a common fraud. People who had lost money because of him finally learned the truth. Mom was worried, but I could see that somewhere deep down she was relieved. "Grandpa would have been pleased," she said one evening. "He always said that the truth would come out sooner or later." Troy took the news of Dexter's arrest hard. "I knew he was no angel," he told me. But to do something like this? He made his own choice, I replied. We're not responsible for his actions. I know that in my head. But my heart is heavy. After that, Troy became more withdrawn. He was not angry with us, but he distanced himself. He moved into his own apartment, rarely came to my mom's salon. I realized that he needed time to digest everything that had happened. Meanwhile, my relationship with Ethan deepened. He helped me with the hotel. We spent evenings together, talking about the future. He was completely different from Kyle. He didn't try to control me, he respected my independence. I like that you're strong, he said once. You don't make me bored. Don't you think I'm too independent? Kyle always said that men don't like that. Kyle's a fool, Ethan laughed. A real man isn't afraid of a strong woman. On the contrary, he's proud of her. In the fall, when the tourist season was over, I decided to take a break and visit my grandfather's grave. I stood by the tombstone and told him about everything that had happened. Grandpa, I said out loud, not hesitating, I think you would be happy. Mom found herself, Dexter got what he deserved, and I finally realized what you wanted to give me. The wind rustled the leaves on the tree near the grave. You gave me more than just a house and money. You gave me a chance to be strong, a chance to protect those I love, a chance to be me. I put a bouquet of chrysanthemums on the grave and left. That same evening, Ethan proposed to me. Not theatrically, not down on one knee with a diamond ring. He simply said, as we sat on the terrace of the mansion, Blair, I want us to be together, forever. Is that a proposal? It's a proposal to live together, to build a future together, to support each other. If you want, we can make it official. If not, we'll just be a couple. I thought about Kyle, who wanted an old-fashioned family, a submissive wife and housewife. Then I looked at Ethan, who accepted me for who I was. Okay, I said. But the hotel remains my project. Of course, and I will expand the workshop. We'll work side by side. We got married the following spring. A modest ceremony, only the closest people. My mom cried with happiness. Troy came too, although he kept to himself. He congratulated me, wished me happiness, but I felt that there was still a wall between us. After the wedding, I approached him. Troy, I know it's complicated, but you are my brother, that's not going to change. He looked at me sadly. I know that, Blair. I just need time. I'll wait, I said, however long it takes. He nodded and walked away. I realized that we might never be as close as we used to be, but that was also part of being an adult, accepting that not everything can be fixed. A year later, Dexter was sentenced to 8 years in prison. He wrote a letter to my mom from prison, asking for forgiveness. What do you think? She asked. I think he finally realized what he did, but that doesn't mean we have to forgive him. Would Grandpa forgive him? I thought about it. Grandpa would have said that forgiveness is not for the one who is guilty, but for the one who forgives, to free yourself from anger. Mom nodded and put the letter in her desk drawer. She didn't answer Dexter, but I could see that her anger was gone. All that was left was indifference. I am 26 years old now. I have a husband who loves and respects me. I have a business that brings me joy and profit. I have a mother who has found herself and is happy. I have memories of my grandfather, who taught me the most important thing, to be strong and protect those you love. Troy still keeps his distance, but I know that time heals. Maybe one day we will be close again. And maybe we won't, and that's okay too. My grandfather's inheritance was not just money and real estate. It was a lesson that true strength is not in dominating others, but in being true to yourself and your principles. That family is not only about blood ties, but also about people who stand by your side in difficult moments. Standing on the terrace of my hotel and looking out at the endless sea, I know that my grandfather would be happy. His granddaughter did not become a submissive housewife. She became the mistress of her own life.